Hello and welcome. This is my presentation of the short story Slowly We Open Our Eyes by Dan Shin. Dan Shin was born in a small town of 20 people in Nebraska in 1964. He was adopted by a construction worker and a stay-at-home mother. Growing up, he became a novelist and author of various amazing short story books. He's a former Oberlin College professor where he taught creative writing and literature. Nowadays, Sean lives in Cleveland, Ohio with his two sons. Throughout his career, he was awarded 4 literary awards: the 2006 Academy Award of Literature, American Academy of Arts and Letters, National Magazine Award in Fiction finalist, and the National Book Award. The critical reception, the first one is a review of Xian's short story book Stay Awake by the Flyaway blog. These stories, each told in a simple melancholy prose we've come to love about Xian's work. Mine's that richness of possibility, that foreboding, not revealing that what is waiting in the dark or on the other side of the door, looking at us through the window but not fully in view. And this last one is an interview that was done with Xian about his short story book. He said, "I've always felt personally and emotionally closer to the searchers rather than the finders, to those who don't get answers as opposed to those who do. For me, the experience of Epicletus is closely related to the experience of the uncanny, but also to the experience of problematic emotions like yearning and ache and psychic unease. That precipice of endless uncertainty, of the impenetrable, those are the moments that I've always loved in literature, as well as the moments that have haunted me in life." Moving on to the story. The plot of this story is fairly simple, yet considerably confusing. Slowly Open Our Eyes is about 2 brothers driving through the plain country of Chicago, driving in the semi-truck used for transport of medical and other wastes, owned by the older brother, which he drives for a living. They take pills and chase them with alcohol. On their way to their grandmother's funeral, they think they hit a deer, but maybe their hazed minds deceive them completely. The characters are 2 brothers, O'Sullivan and Smokey, and they meet after 2 years and they realize how little they actually know each other. During the ride, they have some small talk, pass some booze back and forth, but other than that, these 2 brothers could not be more different. O'Sullivan, Donald, Don, or Donnie, is the younger of the 2. He desperately wants to make a new start for himself after a series of unfortunate events occurred in his life. After getting a diploma, he got stuck in countless debts and was absolutely broke, could not hold a job. Smokey, on the other hand, is a high school dropout who drives the truck transporting medical and other hazardous wastes. He has had this job for 10 years, supposedly making great money, unlike his younger brother. The theme statement. There are many ways to interpret this story. What you take away from it depends solely on you. My theme statement would be this: the inevitability of facing the consequences of our actions. Throughout the story, O'Sullivan is trying to run away from the problem he's created for himself. Eventually, however, he's required to deal with the consequences of his and his brother's actions. It will come to him in a moment, O'Sullivan thinks, though actually he doesn't want it to. It's an awful, inevitable feeling the sound of a bicycle makes when it's on its side and the wheels spinning slowly and then it comes to a stop. The ticking of a roulette wheel as the marble finally settles. Oh my god. 187. As I mentioned earlier about the author, he absolutely loves to involve the mystery of not knowing and leaving the reader confused. In my opinion, important literary element is the narrative perspective. The story is written in the third person, meaning it follows the actions of the 2 brothers as someone else, making the reader feel like they are reliving in the story. It gives the story a completely new perspective and an eerie feeling of something uneasy coming their way. What's interesting about this story, though, is that O'Sullivan thinks about himself in the third person, too. For example, on page 181, as they are driving, O'Sullivan drifts off and thinks, O'Sullivan swung onto his motorcycle and gunned the engine. He had nowhere to go, no responsibilities, nothing held him down. It's almost as if O'Sullivan had a completely separate world in his head. Another great literary element of this story is their chronology. The events that occur in this story are not in chronological order, which often causes the readers to miss many details and makes them go back and reread some sections. It all deceives the human mind into thinking that everything really is okay and safe. This particular section on page 183 is a simple example. And then he notices another one, a cross, just a few yards further down. He can only barely make it out in the darkness. Another cross with a circle of offerings beneath it, followed by, "They were pulling into interstate oasis." This creates a perfect tension and keeps the readers on their toes. And last but not least, the literary element is imagery. I consider this a fundamental element of the story because if you find the clues, you can perfectly see what happens in the end. The deer they think they hit might represent innocence, more specifically O'Sullivan's innocence. This quote on page 173, "They can see the truck's headlights reflect on the blank black surface of its eye, then they hit it. They have hit what they thought was a deer, but in fact it had a much greater meaning." There weren't many words I did not understand, but the ones I did have to look up were lancets, which are a small medical implement used for capillary blood sampling; gossamer, which is something super fine and delicate like a spiderweb; nonplussed is surprised and confused so much that one is unsure how to react; glinting is what gives out or reflect small flashes of light; presentiment is an intuitive feeling about the future, especially one of foreboding; corrugated is a material or surface or structure shaped into alternate ridges and grooves; ellipsis is the omission from speech or writing of a word or words that are superfluous or able to be understood from contextual clues; stupefied makes someone unable to think or feel properly; embankment is a wall or a bank of earth or stone built to prevent a river flooding an area. An allusion is an expression designed to call something to mind without mentioning it explicitly. An indirect or passing reference. This entire story, in my opinion, is one big illusion. Sean leaves those loose ends all over the story, which only contributes to the greatness of the story. He leaves the readers feeling puzzled, but somehow knowing something is not right. A great example of this is on page 185, when O'Sullivan encounters the motorcycle guy. "That's good news for the rest of us," the motorcycle guy said, and gave a grin, the same grin that he'd had when they passed on the interstate, the one O'Sullivan would see in his mind a while later when he thought back to this day, when he thought about the bad things he had done in his life. Sean leads us to the realization that this grin is going to have a significant negative impact on Sullivan's life. Another great example of illusion is on page 177. There's a crack in the glass, but it isn't shattered after all. This indicated that they have in fact hit something, but at the moment they choose to think it was a deer. But unfortunately, the opposite is the truth. And finally, my personal response. Slowly We Open Our Eyes is a challenging story, one that definitely needs to be read more than once in order for you to see all the details and hidden meanings. It is necessary to first understand the views of the author to fully grasp the meaning of the story. Dan Sean's style of writing, short sentences and simple language, made me miss many details throughout the story, but that's exactly what made it more enjoyable. At first, I struggled with understanding the end of the story, but the more times I read it, the better I was able to put all the pieces together and take in the story completely. Personally, being a big fan of fiction, I struggled a lot with this story at first. It definitely was not my cup of tea, but somehow it is now one of my favorites, thanks to all its hidden meanings. I feel like Sean's stories give the reader a chance to interpret them individually and originally, which is a sign of a well-written story. Slowly We Open Our Eyes quite literally opened my eyes to the reality of ordinary life. We don't think some of our actions can impact our life, how we simply look past the reality of butterfly effect and continue with our life, with our reckless behavior, regardless of how it can impact the people around us. It opened my eyes to the fact that things like this happen every single day, more often than not, which is alarming, but nobody seems to take action to try and fix it. I'm grateful for the opportunity that was given to me by reading this story, because now I can say I will never do such thing with confidence. Thank you so much.